To the Satanist, good is evil and evil is good. The truth is a lie and a lie is a truth. Sweet is bitter and bitter is sweet. And everything is twisted around the other way.
The Satanists have merely followed the pantheist way of thought to its logical conclusion. If there are no absolutes, if God doesn't exist, he hasn't set absolute limits to what we can do. So therefore, anything that the self decides it wants, the self can go after.
We believe in greed, we believe in selfishness, we believe in all of the lustful thoughts that motivate man, because this is man's natural feeling.
And therefore, Satanists take that to its extreme and say, if I want to be violent, I can be violent. If I want to hurt others to gain my way, then I can hurt others to gain my way.
There are generally 4 different groups of Satanists. We would like to classify them as the dabbler. Then you have your religious Satanist. Then you have your non-traditional Satanist. And then your generational Satanist. The dabbler we would classify as the teenager. The teenager would simply learn some things from his friends at school, dabble a little bit into the Ouija board, go down the library or the local bookstore and pick up a book, and kind of do his own thing. Not real dangerous, but he can be moved into further areas which could be criminal or dangerous in nature.
The dabblers are the people who are putting the graffiti up on walls, knocking over tombstones, and making a general nuisance of themselves in the public. They are the ones also who will do the animal sacrifices, and they're really novices. They're considered lower-level Satanists by those who are higher up into the satanic realm. The religious Satanists are protected by law. Anton LaVey's First Church of Satan in San Francisco would be an example of that. They are religious in their approach, and they try not to violate any man-made laws because it is not productive for their own self-interest.
Now, the non-traditional Satanist is a gentleman or lady or the group of people who would take certain ideologies, develop a cult, usually polarized around some central theme, oftentimes taken from a biblical aspect, and use that to commit crimes, or they may not commit any crimes, but for what we're talking about for these purposes, the non-traditional Satanist is oftentimes the most dangerous.
Now then there are generational Satanists. These are people who would have Satanism in their family, and it's passed down from generation to generation, just as the name would intimate, and these Satanists would produce all kinds of horrors secretly.
From infancy, they have learned all these things. They have been molested, forced to drink blood, eat feces, urinated upon, sodomized, and just from generation to generation, it continues.
Many Satanists recall being fascinated with occultism at a young age. Some had been ritually dedicated to Satanist children. One person who remembers being initiated by his grandfather is Glenn.
One year at a family reunion, he took all the cousins, all the little kids, and he lined us all up in a row. And he went down the line just one by one, putting his hand on our heads. And he came back and stopped at me, and he said, "This is the chosen one." After that, he took me aside into a barn where it was private, and he laid his hands on my head, and he said, "At the moment of my death, I pass over all my power and my ability to you."
I was finally given the wonderful privilege of realizing that Satan was the god of witchcraft, and I was, at that time, made it very clear that if I really wanted to progress much further, I would have to sell my soul to the devil.
Their main teaching is that Satan had a part in creating the world with God, and he was wrongfully thrown out of heaven when he asked for equal power along with Jehovah God, and that one day he would regain his rightful place. So we have to make his army bigger, so the more recruits there are in Satanism and the occult on the earth, the quicker his army would grow, and then he would take over and overthrow Christ and the Christian church.
we have a very serious problem.
The real Satanists, the hardcore Satanists, are involved in criminal activity, and for that reason they are going to try and look as normal as possible, the better to be able to deceive you. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're teachers, they're oftentimes people who are in positions of great influence over small children.
Priests, ministers, doctors, police officers, judges, businessmen, oilmen, teenagers, they're all linked together for one purpose, to sacrifice whatever they want to Satan.
It would be a whole lot easier if these people wore, had horns and a pitchfork and a red suit, but they just don't. They could be your next door neighbor.
I know when I was involved in the Church of Satan, they were very proud of the fact that there was not a single military installation in the world that did not have an outpost of avowed Satanists. Satanists are drawn to the military because of the idea of war and death. You see, they view war as one gigantic human sacrifice.
Satanism, we are finding, is becoming international and interconnected. They are interconnected in Britain from one city to another, and into Europe and into America. A lot of money is involved, a lot of finance, and this finance is made through pornographic videos, through drugs, and through arms.
Children are being programmed into occult practices by the cartoons and games and stories that they see on television. It seems harmless and fun and exciting. Sometimes children themselves who have played with Ouija boards, believing it to be a bit of fun. They haven't been able to sleep. They've had nightmares, and their lives have been completely changed because of some involvement which they thought was innocent, which they thought was harmless.
Satanic rituals are shrouded in secrecy. New recruits are often blindfolded when taken to the ritual location, or drugged, so that their recollections are blurred and their will to resist is eliminated.
I was blindfolded, taken to the Satanist temple. And when I got in there, I was astonished, to say the least. There was about 400 people or more. They stood and they were worshipping the devil. There were effigies of Satan, half man and half beast, around the walls. There was a high altar, and on the altar there were cups and knives. The chief Satanist sat on a throne-like seat. He was robed and hooded. Around him, in a semicircle, stood some 13 priests and priestesses. Of course, you were told, not to say anything to anybody, and because it was the keynote of the movement was secrecy. And little wonder when you knew what went on in there. You have to have sex and be initiated with the chief priest. After the chief priest has had you, anybody can.
Drawings by children reveal how they were forced to participate in atrocious satanic rituals involving animal and human sacrifice, sometimes even compelled to eat raw meat and drink blood. Heartbreaking accounts detail how children were deliberately trapped in cages or graves for hours at a time, sometimes even with snakes, how they were defecated and urinated on, sodomized and raped by adults in satanic ceremonies. Sometimes adults would wear robes similar to Christian clergy and perform rituals in Christian churches, not only to mock God, but to terrorize the children against a belief in biblical Christianity. And today, more and more cases are revealing an international link between child pornography and Satanism.
One of the things that seems to be real consistent with ritual child abuse in your hardcore type groups is the fact that it's almost an indoctrination method to make that child become part of that group.
If they can ritually abuse children, if they can in any way sexually abuse children, anything to destroy a child's innocence or their trust or their wonder at the world, they will do it.
Satanism exists in this country as it exists elsewhere. It is appallingly evil. It is about murder. It is about child abuse. It's about sexual abuse. It is no joke and must be taken seriously and must be dealt with. The most tragic stories that I've ever heard are where a child has told people what's been happening, and the adults have said, don't be stupid, that doesn't happen in this country.
They brought in alive a white cockerel, the symbol of denial, and they wrung its neck at the high altar, and they slit its throat, and they caught the blood in one of the cups from the high altar. My arm was cut. They stirred the blood in the cup with a knife. I had to drink that blood, put my finger in the blood, and sign a real parchment, not a silly scrap of paper, but a real proper parchment that I would serve the devil the rest of my life. Animal sacrifices is commonplace today. And in the order that I was involved in years ago, there was even human sacrifice.
From one of the nicer, quieter, more beautiful parts of England, namely the county of Surrey, where people would find it hard to believe that these things go on. There is a confession from a woman who said that her baby, when born, was used as a human sacrifice in satanic rituals. She said it herself. She has said it in public. What does one make of that other than a heartbreaking confession to something that's been a guilty secret for a long time?
Audrey escaped, and unlike many others, her baby's life was not sacrificed to Satan. Ultimately, the purpose of Satanism is to commit atrocities against the Judeo-Christian God, his laws, and his most precious creation, mankind.
Christians are the Satanist's worst enemy. They are out to torment you. They are out to blackmail you. They will even kill you. They even tried to kill me when I came out of black witchcraft. Some Satanists who were hand-picked, the most powerful ones, were sent into churches to disrupt the meeting. And we stopped people from going forward when they asked for people to go forward and accept Christ as their Saviour. I just didn't have any morals at all. I believe that the more I did on this earth to promote Satan and Satan worship and black witchcraft, I'd have a greater place later on when Satan himself would rule on the earth. I went into that meeting determined to disrupt the meeting any way that I could think. But here was a message that Jesus loved me and he could change me, he could take the darkness from me. And I realised something. There was nobody, not nobody, who really loved me. Never once did I hear Satan say, and I heard him speak many times, I love you, because he doesn't love anybody.
Many disillusioned Satanists made the choice to terminate their alliance with Satan and give allegiance to Jesus Christ. Their decision, however, while ultimately liberating, was wrought with difficulties.
I'd throw over communion trays, and people thought I was crazy, and I just ran out of those meetings.
When you're into the cult, you're really pretty happy because Satan leaves you alone, you know, because you're pretty much destroying yourself. But when you get out of it, that's when he really tries to bring you down. He'll use your family against you, use a lot of things against you.
Trying to be a Christian wasn't enough. I was still in bondage. Satan controlled my mind quite often. I used to fight not to get to psychic fairs. Particular dates, I would fight not to get to a coven somewhere.
Once you get saved and out of this kind of stuff, you gotta renounce everything that you did in your past. And in the name of Jesus, you gotta renounce everything that you did. Otherwise, you're still gonna be haunted by a lot of that stuff.
When Jesus died, he didn't just die to save you, he died to break every bondage that Satan ever put you into. Now that was just like the best news I'd ever heard.